In this video, I'm going to look at using Android and Compose. So it's not going to do much. I just decided to write myself a ransom note, learn how to use Compose with rows and columns or else. So I wanted to play around with rows and columns and just sort of some simple text, but then I turned it into a ransom note. So I wanted to have this sort of idea of the text being cut from different things, so it has different styles. So I'm playing around with text and some styles and rows and columns. So I had started off with a project, and it was this empty activity, and so that wants me to use Compose. So there was no XML activity underscore main XML in this approach, and you make everything sort of within the Kotlin. So here was the Kotlin, and it gave me some sort of default stuff, the main activity, the override on create, the super, the set content, and it gave me this ransom note theme, and I spelled ransom wrong, so I have to deal with it because it's the package and it's a pain in the ass to change the package. So I have this ransom note theme. It gave me a surface. It gave me a call to a function, which I made it called word display. I think it was called, might have been called greeting originally. I changed it to word display. And then down here, it calls a text function. And then there is a preview version. So let's try to do some of this understanding. Okay, so here we set this main idea of then I'm going to specify something about the overall surface. And so what did I play with here? It gave me this fill max size, sort of that was part of the default. And I added a padding. So that was this sort of white all around was my padding of 10 dp. And when you have the modifier lets you assign something, modify it in some way. And then if you want to do multiple things within modifier, you chain. So the fill max size was 1, and then I wanted to also do my padding. So I added to it in chaining the parts of the modifier. I don't know if it's a proper word, but I'm calling them components. And then a surface also had a color. The default thing came in with based on, they were choosing a color based on some theme, and I just went for gray. Okay. And then comes the question of what did I actually want to display? So they were saying, when this sort of popped up originally, sort of greeting Android. So I turned greeting into word display. And so somehow I'm displaying the word learn, but they call the function, they called greeting once. They were only greeting you once. That makes sense. But I turned greeting into word display, and I was displaying a word at a time in these different styles to make my ransom note. And so then I wanted to have many words, and I wanted them not to be on top of one another. So if I had just said word display, word display, word display, all those words would have ended up on top of one another, up sort of in the upper left. And the same thing sort of happens in a constraint layout. So in some sense, this is not surprising. And then, but we need some way to get them not on top of one another. And that one way of doing that is this row and column. And so row, you put number of things in row, and they make up a row. So here is uh, a row. Row uses curly brackets. So the row begins. So you use the keyword row, and you begin and end with this curly bracket. And then you put the things you are displaying within row, no commas, just sort of one after the other. And I'm calling word display, which we have to describe below, but I'm using that 4 times. So learn how to use. So all those things, when they are finally like rendered and displayed, they will be displayed in a row, and they will not be on top of one another within that row. Okay. Then I have another row composed with rows, another row add columns, and then another row or else. But I put all of that into a column. If I just had this row and then this row, those rows would be on top of one another. But I use column, and then those are the items that are making up a column. So each row is going to be spaced out vertically. So here within a row, all the things within row were spaced out, not on top of one another to form a row. So all the things within column are spaced out and not on top of one another to make a column. Okay, so that's this first sort of, that's what's up here in sort of main activity. I'm sort of playing with the row and the column sort of to say what I want to display, and I don't want them all on top of one another. So this is my layout. This is how I'm getting them to not just to be sort of generated dynamically by Kotlin and not be all on top of one another. Okay, so all these words that you see over here in my ransom note are calls to word display. This just tells me the argument here is just the content. But now I have to say how I'm going to, what do I mean by word display? So that's down here. And again, that came, this, all the shells of everything came in the sort of hello world. And I think this was called greeting. And I'm just sort of playing around with it to turn it into something more. And so I'm playing around with this idea, seeing what I can do. I'm going to ultimately make a text, a piece of text to display a word. And I want to see sort of what are some of the things I can play with, vary to within a text. Okay, so I found at least I decided to play with the font color and the back color. So you can see some of my texts are black background with white writing, and some of them are white with black writing. So that's what these do. I'm going to change them together because I don't want black on black or white on white. So I have those variables that I'm going to choose randomly. I have a variable for the size of the font. So these all look, well, you can see that the 2 here, for instance, is a smaller font size. So that is, and then you have to, play around and get all of the types of these things. So my size was a text unit. Font weight is going to be whether it's bold or not. So it's maybe hard to see, but some of those are bold and some of them are not. Then there is font family. The font family, I have, I think, monospaced and cursive and so on. And then the font style is italics or not. So some of these, how that might be in italics, that looks a little slanted. With the cursive, it's hard to tell if it's italics or not, because the cursive may be a little bit slanted itself. Okay. So here's a way to pick a random number. So I'm picking this range 0 to 1, and I'm picking a random thing from that range. So it's either 0 or 1. If it's 0, the font is black and the color back is white, and otherwise it's white on black. I'm getting another random number, this time between 0, 1, 2, or 3. And if it's 0, 24, size 28, size 32, size 36 size. And I had to use SP here because that is a font related size. Okay. So it didn't like, I think I tried it a little bit to do, at one point, to do DP or something like that. And it didn't like that. It wanted specifically something more fonty. Here's a random number between 0 and 1 to decide whether it's a bold weight or a normal weight. And here's random to choose whether it's monospace, serif, or cursive. And then here, whether it's randomly, whether it's italics or normal. Now, this is just picking variables, but they're not applied to the text just yet. Now, finally, here I have the text. Pardon me. I'm using a modifier. I have this sort of text. I don't know, I'll call it a box. I'm giving it a border and some padding. So you, pardon me. It doesn't look great. I'm just trying to sort of play with some of the things you can play with and see their effect. So I'm putting a border around the text and I'm putting some padding around the text. But with my weird coloring, I haven't gotten, the padding to have the same color as the rest of the text. Okay. The actual text in the text will be the word, which was sent as an argument, and that was here. So though every time I call this, I have a different word. So that was the text. The color I used as my font color, and I got the background color by incorporating it into the style. So I had a textile background, my background color. So that one is a little bit different than the other ones because the background belonged within a larger thing of style. So that's the only part of the style I'm changing here. The font size, the font weight, the font family, the font style, these were all separated by commas. The different aspects of the modifier were chained together. And that was the text. And so that's what you see here. I can, every time I run it, it should be a little bit different because of the randomness. Okay, so it always says the same things. I have my row and column structure. I always have sort of hard coded, so it's not any kind of proper wrapping or anything like that. It was just sort of what makes up the rows and columns were hard coded. So you see here, these font sizes were large, and so I was getting only the wrapping within a text, but not within my rows and columns. So it would need to be a more sophisticated algorithm to do that. And then down here, because we are writing this and in Kotlin, and I don't have if I were making an activity main, I would be sort of generating it and jumping back and forth between code and design or staying in design, and I would have a sense of what it looked like. If you want a sense of what things look like, you can work with this preview at Composable, and then you can sort of make a version just for the purposes of previewing. So again, I had my ransom note theme. That was all the way from the top, my ransom note theme. So that this is the sort of actual one up here. This is my actual ransom note theme. And then down here, I just have the to play around to see what it looks like, the preview version. So I can jump over to design, and you sometimes have to update it. So it got updated. If I change something, I may have to click the button to get it updated again. And I had different words and different rows and different columns here, but I can do enough to see, is it working out for me? Do I like the preview? So it doesn't so you can do like a smaller version here. Do I like what it looks like? And then okay, then I'm going to go ahead and do the full thing. Okay, so that's it. That's what I wanted to just get myself started in working with Compose. So I'm used to, or more used to, the constraint layout. So I'm used to the idea of, if I don't constrain them properly, they lie on top of one another. That over here in Compose, I'm doing with these rows and columns. So all the things within row don't fall on top of one and each other and span out in a row. And all the things within column, which for me happen to be rows, are not going to fall on top of one another vertically. So they're going to be spread out in a single column vertically. And that's how I got my words to not all be on top of one another and to sort of read from top to bottom, from left to right. And then what else did I do? I played around with a lot of the things you can do with text. So color and size and weight and family and style, just sort of playing with them and playing with them randomly, because I was writing a ransom note to myself. I'd better learn Compose or else. All right, that's what I wanted to do in this one. Thanks for your attention.